Good morning, everyone. It's Sunday, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. Massachusetts Congresswoman Lori Trahan is our guest this morning. Let's go on the record. Rising in House leadership and outspoken on issues impacting the nation and the Commonwealth. With the 2024 presidential election now just 6 months away, an awful lot to talk about. The Congresswoman's in the chair. Let's go on the record.
From WCVB Channel 5, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Welcome to OTR, everyone. I'm Ed Harding, along with News 35's political reporter, Charmin Sacchetti. It's great to have you with us this morning. As you can see, joining us at the table is the Congresswoman Lori Trahan, representing the state's 3rd District. It's great to see you as always. Thanks for coming.
Back. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Let's start with the college campus protests that we've seen here in Massachusetts and also around the country. We've seen clashes on some campuses. President Biden defended the right to protest last week, but said order must prevail. Do you agree?
I do. I'm a mom. My oldest daughter will be off to college in no time. And I think, like a lot of parents, we've been deeply concerned about what we've seen on college campuses these last few weeks. And I just remind folks to, I think folks are getting a little crowded out by the conversation being hogged by the extremes. And we just want to speak really clearly about what's happening. First, what happened on October 7th with Hamas killing over 1,000 innocent civilians, taking hundreds more into hostage is unacceptable. In addition, how the war has been prosecuted has been equally heartbreaking, with so many civilians, Palestinian civilians, dying. And so, I believe the goal should be, we have to get the hostages home. We have to end the violence. And I think a lot of people want to see that. In fact, the only time we've seen a significant amount of hostages returned home is when there's been a ceasefire, which is what we've been calling for. So there's real frustration, which is why you see so many people taking to protest, which has a rich tradition in our country. That being said, we have seen instances where that protest has been weaponized against Jewish students. It's been calling for the mass killing of Jews who support Israel. We've seen destruction of property meant to intimidate people who don't agree with them. And that has no place in our society.
But should they be shut down even if they're peaceful?
No, peaceful protest has always been a part of what's happened on our college campus. It's a part of, free discourse, expression, free speech. However, when it does threaten the lives of Jewish students who are there as well, there to learn, and when it rings of anti-Semitism, it doesn't belong in our public discourse, much less on our campuses where students are there to go to feel safe and exercise their free
So let's talk
speech.
about the bigger picture. What should happen in Gaza? What would you like to see happen in Gaza?
Oh, well, certainly we are hoping for a ceasefire that returns more hostages home. I think we're all worried about this point in the conflict on what's going to happen in Rafah. And it's worth reminding that at every point in this conflict, Palestinians have been encouraged to go to Rafah. There's tens of thousands of people there, innocent civilians with, not enough food, not enough shelter. So to think that there could be an indiscriminate attack or a bombing there is just something that I wholeheartedly agree with the president. We have to keep the pressure on the Israeli government, the Israeli army, not to proceed and not to launch an offensive in Rafah. And we have to just continue putting pressure on this ceasefire, having Hamas agree to this current deal so that we can get more hostages home, and then hopefully establish a longer period of peace to make room for a resolution to this conflict.
The next item is Florida's 6-week abortion ban is now in effect. So simple question, what's your reaction to that?
Well, I think I share the horror that so many women do across the country. Since Roe v. Wade was overturned 2 years ago, there's just a simple choice on the table, right? You either believe that women have the right to make their health decisions with their doctor, or you think politicians are better suited to make those decisions for them. Here in Massachusetts, we trust women to make that decision. But what we've seen in Alabama with IVF access being paused because of the abortion ban, the dangerous abortion ban in Florida, is just not who we are as a country. And I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure people understand the stakes, right? I mean, Democrats are for making sure that we reinstate Roe and we protect that freedom that you have. I've shared my story that my husband and I had in terms of accessing IVF. That would be outlawed. More than half of the Republicans in the House of Representatives today support a national ban on abortion. And that would sweep up Massachusetts as well.
As someone who did go through the IVF process, let me ask you this. Do you think that IVF should have protections under federal law?
Absolutely, absolutely. And there are many people who will say that they're for IVF, yet they won't take their name off of the Life at Conception bill, and they won't join us in passing a bill that protects IVF. And I think that tells you everything that you need to know. This is going to be a defining issue as we head into the November election, because women are now seeing the harms that are being done.
Well, what kind of an impact do you think this will have in the presidential?
Oh, I think it's going to bring women out in droves. As you know, in Florida, there's also a ballot initiative to protect the right to abortion as this 6-week abortion ban goes into effect. I think that's going to motivate a lot of women to speak up and say this is not the life or the country that we want our daughters and our granddaughters to grow up in, one that has less rights than our moms and our grandmothers grew up with. So I think this will be a defining issue in the election.
This week, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene says that she will force a vote to try and push the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, out. Democrats say that they will join with Republicans to kill that effort if it gets to the floor. Have you decided on how you will vote, and how will you vote?
Yeah, so first I'll just say this is ridiculous. We have had so much disruption to this Congress because an extreme group of Republicans have vacated their last speaker. That just happened 6 months ago. I'll remind you that everything stops when we don't have a speaker. There's no work being done to reduce the cost on American families. There's nothing to be done against the border or immigration reform or to deal with all the crises that we have globally. So this is just a colossal waste of time. I think Democrats have proven that we're going to step up. We're going to be the adults in the room. As long as there's an opportunity for us to work in a bipartisan way, we're going to do that. And so I will be a yes on the motion to table the motion to vacate that will be brought forth by Marjorie Taylor Greene. We've seen this with the debt crisis, funding the government. We saw this with the national security package. Democrats have put the interests of the American people and our country's national security above this, chaos that's played out in the House.
What do Democrats want in return for that?
It's funny. I think the only person that's actually wants something out of this is Marjorie Taylor Greene. I have to pass her every day on the Capitol steps as she faces all the cameras and gets the attention that she so much craves. I think we look at it differently. This isn't so much about negotiating what we're going to get. As long as we have a Speaker of the House or people on the Republican side that we can work with to advance policies that help the people that we represent.
Like what, though? I mean, last week on OTR, Congressman Lynch, I'm sorry for interrupting, but Congressman Lynch said, he's hopeful for an immigration deal. So are Democrats going to push that now?
Well, we did see by working with the speaker this last time around, we finally got him 6 months later to put the national security package on the floor. And so that, do I think that there will be movement on immigration? Look, I've got my... I'm thinking about this pragmatically. Donald Trump runs the Republican Party right now, and he has made it clear that he doesn't want anything done on immigration. We had a border security package with Republicans and Democrats in the Senate. Probably not a perfect bill by any means, but probably the biggest reform that we've had since the 90s. Donald Trump said, we do not want that to be voted on because I want to run on that in this campaign. And I think that tells you everything you need to know about the Republican Party and how much we're going to be able to accomplish on issues that Donald Trump wants central to the campaign.
Let's talk about Stewart Hospitals right now, because you have Stewart Hospitals in your district.
I have 3.
The state has activated what it's called an emergency operations plan that includes an incident command system. What this does is this allows the state to quickly respond to clinical needs or issues that come up. So what's your reaction to that move, that step?
Look, I applaud the administration on how they've handled the Stewart situation. I have 3 hospitals in my district, and patients are worried that they're not going to be able to access their care or the quality of care once they get through the doors. What will that be like? And so along the way, the Governor Healy, Secretary Walsh, they've been 3 steps ahead. We're seeing a lot of our community hospitals have to deal with, overflow from maybe some of those hospitals, and they've taken steps to make sure that they've been strengthened. And so this has been something that You know, on a federal level, when I think of how we resolve this, one, the private equity model does not work in our healthcare
So you would not
system.
support some kind of federal or state legislation that limits private equity in healthcare?
Yeah, so we
You would.
We've been doing hearings on the role that private equity and how that has led to hospital closures across the country. And so I think we do need to continue that. One thing that I've written is essential hospitals designation on the federal level. You know, all the hospitals that I have in my district are safety net hospitals, and we have to make sure that there's a funding mechanism to ensure that they stay open and that they're not cutting services because of the financial hardship that they're going through as they recover from COVID. And so that's all part of this ecosystem.
All right.
Congresswoman Trahan is in the chair. We continue on the record after this.